Hey folks, I want to take a few minutes of your afternoon up on today to talk about the rough draft that is due this weekend. Now, when you go into the lesson plans, lesson learning modules, you open up week 7. Down at the bottom, it has the milestone 3 guidelines and rubric. So let's talk a little bit about this for a second. What the rough draft is going to show when you finish with the rough draft, and the rough draft needs to be at least 8 pages long to kind of cover all this, right? You're going to show how you can talk about each of these secondary sources, their strengths, their weaknesses, the bias that is in that source, whether intentional or not intentional. You're also going to be talking about how well the authors used their source to validate the points they were making, and the historical context in which each source was written. So those are the big rocks that you're going to uncover in your rough draft. And then you're going to move into identifying any gaps that may exist or any opportunities for other research. And then you're going to kind of wrap up in the last half page or so with the general thoughts you have about the secondary literature relative to your topic. I would be remiss if I did not stop for a second here and remind everybody, you are not writing about the topic. This is not a research paper. Continue to see that kind of work being turned in throughout the course. Don't go down that path. You need to talk about what other historians have said. Go back to the early announcements. There's buku announcements this term about what that is and how to do it. Reach out if you don't understand. But when you're looking at that webpage that's got the requirements and the rubric on it, you're going to see a section in the middle of the page that's got kind of an outline, Roman numerals, and then subtopics, and those are questions it's prompting you to make. What I want to caution you is I don't use that part of the rubric to grade. When your paper pops up in the grade book and I'm looking at it to grade it, the thing that pops up is the rubric itself, that matrix down at the bottom of the page. That is what I am comparing your work against as I read your work. Okay? So it is important to use that rubric as your guide. There are 16 elements, the 16th being clear communication. And I'm not going to walk through all of these, but I want you to get a basic framework of how to do this. The easiest way to write one of these papers is to not sit down and try to become William Faulkner and create this tremendous amount of prose with all the riffs and flares of a Faulkner novel in your work. The easiest way to do it is print off that rubric, and next to your notepad or your computer screen, however you work, make an outline, just like you learned to do in 8th grade English, 9th grade English, and it got drilled into your head in high school, right? Make an outline. Bullet 1, narrative. Have an A and a B on the narrative. Bullet 2, defend the choice. An A and a B there. And work your way through the paper that way. Before you start to type, before you get into writing your paper, write your outline. Then as you work through the outline, you can check things off. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah, I've got that. I need to go back and add more here. That's the best way to approach this paper. It will keep you focused. What happens, because there are 15 critical elements in the rubric, 15 criteria plus writing well makes 16. Students get to writing and they get caught up in the words they're using. They get caught up in the story they're telling. And 2 things happen then. 1, you move away from creating a historiographical essay and you get into a research paper. That's not going to be good. The second thing that's going to happen is you're going to get so wrapped up in the wonderful writing that you leave out specific criteria that the rubric requires. And if you leave out just one or two areas, it's really hard to have a great paper after that. I do want to focus just on one thing before we wrap up here. In Defend the Choice, if you look at what that rubric says, it says provide a historiographical thesis statement. First four words in there, provides historiographical thesis statement. If you are writing a research paper thesis statement, the rest of your paper will go downhill from there. Okay? And that one or two sentences, I should be able to read it, know what you're going to talk about, the lens you're using, the event, and if you really get it polished, you'll give me an example of what you're going to show me. Okay? So don't let that slip by. If you have any questions, just reach out, m.caldwell@snhu.edu.